Kako, a Komomata Curtain Call, a program of reviews, previews, interviews, and features of and or with the great art and artists on Maui and beyond. I'm Paul James Brown. Since 2000, Neida Bangerter has been feeding our little corner of paradise with a banquet of gourmet aesthetic events. First as the late Dara Orwig's assistant, and for the last 15 years as the Schaefer International Gallery Director of Exhibitions. This gem of a gallery that philanthropist Carolyn Schaefer has so generously bestowed upon us. Over those 24 years, Mrs. Bangerter has assisted with and or curated, directed, hung, and managed 152 exhibits. I had the honor of reviewing almost all of them. As I look back over those years, there are so many, it is impossible to cite them all. The one thing they all had in common were great planning, outstanding execution, museum quality, and thoughtful understanding of the best way to present the work for maximum viewer enjoyment, understanding, and most importantly, appreciation. With the current show, ʻike Kanaka, Mrs. Bangerter has decided to retire. When I learned this, I felt the need to express my appreciation for the amazing art she has brought to enlighten, expand, and delight our consciousness over this remarkable woman's career at the Schaefer International Gallery of the Maui Arts and Cultural Center. I asked her to share her top 6 shows, and she generously complied, although she added the postscript, quote, "I loved them all, 152 exhibits," unquote. When Mrs. Bangerter succeeded Mr. Orwig in 2009, the first exhibit she curated was June Kaneko and David Kuraoka, Cross Currents. At the time, I said, quote, "Neida Bangerter, the new gallery director," I got her title wrong. I always looked to her from then on as the head honcho. In her first time up at bat, has hit a grand slam with this exhibition. It is nothing short of a coup d'etat to get someone of Kaneko's stature to participate in such an exhibit. All I can say is the stars were lined up for this one. 2 years in the making, Mrs. Bangerter traveled to Omaha and to Kauai to select the work. Actually, she curated 2 shows because when the economy went down the tubes, so did the budget for this show. So several Kaneko pieces she wanted to bring had to be switched for pieces that were less costly to ship. The look of this exhibit is world-class museum quality all the way. And from that auspicious beginning, Mrs. Bangerter has maintained that level of quality throughout her tenure. Next came one of my all-time favorite shows from 2013, Wes Bruce's Taken by Wonder. Mr. Bruce was the gallery's first artist in residence. About this show, I said, quote, "Using found and donated objects, Bruce has created a multi-level labyrinthian environment which features the artifacts from a mythical group of people he refers to as the ancestors. Outside the installation are 15 portraits of the ancestors. Bruce told me they are flora, fauna, and phantoms." The viewer will note that apart from the excellence of this work, that the wood for these came from 30-year-old planks from the cabins at Waianapanapa. People from throughout the island have been beguiled by Bruce and given over treasures for this exhibit. One needs to remember Bruce arrived here on June 7th and gathered all the materials on display and created all 15 ancestors and the installation. He likes to call it a fort in 2 months. It was an interactive experience that Mrs. Bangerter said, quote, "This project had the most impact on community engagement I could imagine. People still talk about it," unquote. Mrs. Bangerter has been a champion of Hawaiians and Hawaiian culture throughout her tenure. In 2014, she presented Mohala Ho Ke Kapa, Kapa Blossoms Anew, an exhibit which caused me to muse, quote, "The line between what is visual art and what is craft has been getting fuzzier and fuzzier. It used to be, if it was functional, then it was a craft. If it existed only to be looked at and appreciated, then it was art. But then came interactive art, where the aesthetic experience was not much about looking at something, but about feeling and experiencing it. Next, there was sound art. That was not music, but soundscapes that transported one. So without getting into an esoteric discussion of the subject, let me just say that what you will see at the Mohala Ho Ke Kapa show is 99.99% art. The exhibit features 22 artists. According to Neida Bangerter, director of the gallery, it is the first statewide effort to present an exhibition that merges the function and form of Hawaiian kapa with visual layers of traditional design and contemporary departure. Kapa was primarily used for clothing by the Hawaiians up until the latter part of the 19th century. There was an excellent display by Wesley San of the female Noe Ao Akaya Ohana and the male ka'uiki, made from pau'ulu, young breadfruit saplings, unquote. I continued, quote, "This is a most exceptional show which should tour the state and the country. Slowly but surely, the wrongs of the past are being righted, and the Hawaiian culture is reemerging stronger than ever. Be sure to take in this experience," unquote. Mrs. Bangerter has made a conscious effort throughout her career as Director of Exhibitions at the Schaefer International Gallery to champion the dignity, quality, and excellence of the Hawaiian people and their culture. The next year, 2015, Mrs. Bangerter demonstrated the sound art I alluded to in my 2014 review when she brought Celeste Bouzier-Mougenot, a French artist and composer who was France's representative to the Venice Biennale. The MACC Schaefer International Gallery is living up to its name with the latest exhibit. Monsieur Bouzier-Mougenot is known for combining everyday items to create soundscapes. This untitled work had 3 inflatable children's pools with porcelain bowls and crystal glasses floating on the water. They were caught in a current created by silent pumps. The room was tuned by the artist, including the water temperature, which was set for maximum resonance. The resulting sound was somewhere between Quasimodo on steroids and a massive wind chimes in a wind tunnel. In 2017, Mrs. Bangerter broke out of the gallery into the Yokauchi Founders Court with the phenomenal show by textile artist Akihiko Izukura, The Way of Natural Textiles. This show eclipsed the interior of the gallery and flew above the entrance and enhanced the air above the Yokauchi Pavilion. These silk and bamboo tunnels and a layered silk bamboo orb greeted visitors to the events at the center and hung around for a month. Mr. Izukura is a master textile artist from Japan. Mrs. Bangerter traveled to his atelier in Kyoto, Japan to study his philosophy, to honor sustainability and symbiosis with nature in his silkwork. For this exhibition, he created 30 by 60 foot site-specific installation made of woven silk in a large ovoid form, supported by bamboo, that visitors were able to walk through. This tunnel-like structure resembled a giant silkworm cocoon with 3 8-foot diameter orbs inside, one spun by 10,000 silkworms and 2 others made by Izukura out of cocoons. Mrs. Bangerter commissioned San Francisco-based composer Christopher Willits to create a sound collage for the installation. About this show, I said, quote, "Neida Bangerter, gallery director, and her general factotum, Dietmar Hurl, consistently raise the bar and stretch what we know and perceive as art in exhibit after exhibit. But this one exceeded all expectations," unquote. Finally, in 2022, Mrs. Bangerter brought 7 artists from throughout the U.S. to interpret wind and water through the medium of paper, changing it materially in any way they thought would bring forth the theme and truthful expression. This was yet another wow from Mrs. Bangerter and her assistant Jonathan Clark. Through their tireless hard work, outstanding aesthetic senses, and impeccable taste, we consistently have world-class exhibits that would be at home in any gallery. I was particularly taken with the work of Koichi Yamamoto's kinetic printed kites, or the hanging cylinders representing the La Pala'apa tree, a species endemic to Oahu and Kauai, by Oahu artist Janetta Knapp, and the return of Wes Bruce for yet another residency. Besides wonderful exhibits, Mrs. Bangerter has provided countless interactive experiences for our community, which have enhanced, expanded, and encouraged aesthetic awareness, consciousness, and appreciation. Mrs. Bangerter is not just an administrator, she was an artist first. In 2000, her work, Native Lands, was selected by the Art Maui board as the image for the 2001 Art Maui. About that piece, I said, large, colorful at first glance, it is pleasant and almost childlike. On examination, a more adult and sinister world is revealed. In a show notable for its lack of edgy work, the board is to be congratulated for selecting this piece, unquote. A visit to her website, NeidaB.com, reveals the depth and talent of her art. Perhaps next year, the Schaefer International Gallery could honor her with a retrospective. Well, that's Curtain Call for this week. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Paul James Brown. Ahui ho.